Hey Edge, how you doing?
Matt, awesome. Thank you.
I want to welcome everybody back to another exciting episode of Olympic Sasquatches and Beyond. Tonight, yeah, we're super excited. But real quick, before we get into all the we got some news to announce, and that is we are now on Spotify and we are now on Patreon, and we'll include those down in the bottom. Basically, by going and joining those, you just help us grow our channel and support what we're doing, and we can continue to bring more good content to you, more great interviews and expeditions. What's going on new with you and your channel though, Edge?
Always busy. I got a video that I'm prepping on YouTube right now to drop Friday. That's going to be an awesome one. And then you and we just went out and did another night expedition, and so that one's also in the works. Oh my goodness, I don't want to let out any secrets, but we came across some fun stuff out there, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. It was pretty. Well, we didn't realize some of it until we got back and got looking at the footage. So that was
Even more. Yeah.
exciting. So yeah, you can keep up with what's going on over there at Expedition Edge. But
Yeah.
this is the part of the show that I always, getting into the intro and everything. And a lot of times I just want to get to the guest, because I am so excited about who we have here.
Another banger, Matt. Another banger. This one's going to be so fun.
I first met our guest back in October at Yakima at a conference that I did. And yeah, she is just impressive. And I want to go over her bio real quick and introduce her. So we'll get into that. She's deep within the shadow of Washington Forest and in the Cascade Mountains. We have Barb Shupe, who has spent more than 40 years and decade living and working in the remote mountain community, unaware that she was slowly becoming part of something far bigger than herself. What began as curiosity evolved into years of extraordinary encounters and unprecedented relationship built on mutual trust with the Sasquatch beings she believes inhabits the wilderness around her home. In 2013, Barb launched a YouTube channel, Squatchin with Barb and Gabby, documenting her weekly journey into habituation, sharing strange encounters, unexplained activities, and some of the most compelling footage in modern Sasquatch research. But over time, Barb came to a chilling realization that she wasn't the one doing the habituating. From the now famous Cloaker footage to her featured appearances in the acclaimed films Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, and American Sasquatch Man, Myth, or Monster, Barb has become one of the most recognized and controversial voices in the world of Sasquatch research. Today she continues to share her experiences, evidence, and her ongoing interactions through her interviews, investigations, and her powerful new book, The Unseen Audience, Walking with Sasquatch. Everyone, please welcome Barb Shupe.
Hi,
Barb. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. That was an awesome intro. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you have a very impressive spanning, 40 years. Wow, that's a lot into this
I've
world.
been in the woods a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started into all that? Were you fascinated by it as a child? I mean, living here in Washington State, I'm sure it's always something that's out there. So.
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to have parents that took me camping up at Mount St. Helens before the eruption. So I got to spend a lot of time on Spirit Lake and in the forest up there. And that was where my interest in Sasquatch first began, because at night in the campground, the park rangers would have a big bonfire and invite all the kids in the campground to come and listen to stories. And my favorite was the one about Ape Canyon. And I was fascinated. My little brother, he was terrified, but it started a lifelong fascination for me. And, as I got older, I grew up in Enumclaw with a right in view of the mountains. And I'd go out, draw pictures of the mountains and dream of the day when I could be there. And as soon as I was old enough to drive, that's where I spent all my time. And out of high school, I went to work for the Forest Service, and then I started watching equipment on for logging companies. And yeah, I never realized how much was going on out there until I was right here, in Greenwater as and back in the 90s. Spending time up the trail here behind the cabin is when I really realized that they aren't just a myth. They aren't just something they're not just another form of wildlife. They're not rare. And yeah, they're right here and they're all around us. And I think they're like this for a lot of people. We just don't know it.
Absolutely. I have to agree with that. I didn't realize, I knew you were around Mount Rainier. I apologize,
Mhm.
Mount Rainier. But I didn't realize it was Greenwater. That is definitely a hot spot. I've heard a
Oh, yeah.
lot of stories out of Greenwater for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, I could tell you quite a few of them myself.
Yeah. Yeah, especially living there and experiencing all the stuff that you did. So what was your first experience with Sasquatch? What was your first uh, moment?
Well, the very first time that I found the trail, that's right here across from the cabin, I was new to Greenwater at the time and I'd heard about a good hiking trail. So it was just a really beautiful spring day. And one of the guys that I worked with decided, well, let's go for a hike. So we went, found this trail and got up there a ways. And I noticed a couple of broken treetops were laying in the road. And they were green, freshly broken, and no explanation. And it got my curiosity. So I started looking at the trees a little closer. And when I stepped back off the road behind them, I found a perfect footprint. And it had all the toes. It was crisp, it was fresh, and it was huge. And that was my first experience when I knew that they were out here and they were real. But, even then I was still thinking that it was a really rare individual that was passing through to more remote places. And it took a few years for me to realize that no, they're permanent residents. They're always around. And it
Yeah.
was probably another 12, 14 years or so before I had a sighting. And even then, I didn't realize what it was that I had experienced because I just saw a big black ball of hair bouncing through the trees over my cabin. And, there was no head, no wings, no tail, no arms, no legs. It was just this black ball of hair. And, by process of elimination, I always came back to baby Sasquatch, but that seemed ridiculous to me because, well, who has Sasquatches in the trees over their cabin and where was its mother? Things like that. But, I always thought back to that experience. And it wasn't until I started having more experiences around the cabin and around our house that's a few miles up the road in
Wow.
2012 that that was when it all became permanently cemented into my brain that this is all real and happening all around us here.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you actually saw, so this was something swinging in the treetops. It wasn't on the ground,
Well,
this black.
no, no, the first one that I saw, it just dropped straight down out of the tree. That's my cabin is surrounded by big trees. So I was
Right.
on one side of the cabin standing by the fire pit and I heard something, looked up, and it was just a black ball of hair about so big, just dropped straight down, hit a limb on the side of the tree, and from that limb it bounced over the roof of the cabin to another tree, dropped down to a lower limb, and then back over the roof. And this time it just bounced off the corner of the porch roof. And I'm thinking this is some poor broken something, a bear or something. I
Yeah.
didn't know what it was. And I ran over here thinking that I was going to see some creature laying on the ground that is severely injured. And there was
Yeah.
nothing there, And so, yeah, I didn't really see anything more than a ball of hair that time. And about 6 months after I saw the one that was following the elk up here, I got to see another one up in the trees again. And this one was bigger, still probably a juvenile, but this one had one long hairy arm reaching out. And instead of bouncing from tree to tree back and forth, this one went from one treetop to another tree, which that one bent over and snapped back up. And then it continued through the tops of, I think, a total of 6 trees from the first tree before it hit the ground and took off around the side of the mountain.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, even that one though never extended its legs out. It just had the one arm that was reaching out. It was long and hairy and
So it would,
reaching. So,
yeah, it would just reach. It wouldn't. That's pretty
yeah,
cool. That's pretty
yeah.
impressive.
Well, and for the longest time, I was thinking, that they must have tremendous strength just in their wrists and ankles to be able to push off, without extending any arms and legs out to do it. But, I
Yeah.
think maybe they have some other abilities that we just can't quite explain that helps with what happened there. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't normal.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially seeing something like that, you know, when you're not expecting it, bears, the normal stuff, elk and everything else, and then you see something that you the whole world has said doesn't exist, and yet there it is right there in front of you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It
so,
takes a while to wrap your head around it.
yeah, I bet. And that's pretty impressive. So did you start like so you're having this stuff happen on your property, you're starting to see things, you're starting to experience stuff. What do you do next? What do you start reaching out to people, or do you, I mean, start going and getting books? What's going on?
Well, in 2012, at the end of August, I'd heard some vocalizations a few miles up the valley here, where our house is. And I recognized the vocalizations. I'd seen them on Finding Bigfoot or heard them and different programs. I'd heard the Ohio Howl type scream before. So I knew what it was when I heard it. And I was working at the little mom and pop general store here in town. So when locals would come into the store and I would ask them, so, you ever see or hear anything strange out there? And there were quite a few people that actually spoke up. And I was really surprised because after all these years in a tiny community, you'd think that, people, they talk, there's not a lot of secrets. And if something like that was happening, you'd think you'd hear about it, but they don't talk about it unless you ask them. And even then, a lot of folks would only talk about it, if nobody else was around, and I promised never to mention their name or anything, so it was a real eye opener to discover that I wasn't the only one having experiences. And so I I started sharing, with the neighbors, and then I talked to my boss at the store and told him about it, and he put up a big sign up front that said "Report all Bigfoot encounters here." So that was handy. So I got to, listen to people's stories when they'd come into the store with something that they wanted to share. And we had a book that we would write things down in there. And I made a report to the BFRO about what had happened, what was going on here. And one of the investigators came out and we spent a day. I took him on a tour of everything. And then I found out there were some local Bigfoot meetings. So I started going and I got to know some people and I joined Facebook and got to know some people on Facebook, joined some Bigfoot groups, and it's just really kind of grown from there.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. That's we have a mutual friend, Mel
Oh,
Scahan,
mm-hmm.
and he's the one. A little bit about me. I had very similar experience to you. I didn't experience anything like cloaking or anything like that, but we had a house for 4.5 years where we had experiences, and so it was everything you're saying is bringing back memories because I was the same way. I would go talk to the neighbors, and they're like, "Yeah, it's okay," And then I showed them some pictures of tracks and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, these things are here. They're coming through."
Mm-hmm.
But it
Yeah.
was Mel that I first reached out to, and he really helped and guided me a lot. But
Mel's a great guy. Yeah.
he is, yeah. Yeah, so I mean that's pretty incredible. I love hearing that, and that you had the courage to come forward and tell people what's going on, because I think you were right in the beginning where you said it's not a rare event. This is,
Right.
we just interviewed who was it? The Rich Germeau. We just interviewed him. His episode's coming out. He had a little bit of a thing going on with some folks that he knew where this habituation site, and you're starting to hear more and more of that. And so I don't know if it's, do you, first off, let me backtrack a little bit. What do you think Sasquatch is? Where, because there's these camps, right? There's the bio camp, there's the paranormal camp, there's the hominid, what do you think it is? What do you feel like it is?
Well, I think they're a different kind of people. They're wild. They live in nature. They don't need any of the things that we need. They're perfectly self-sufficient. They're like ninjas in the woods. I believe they are absolutely 100% flesh and blood, but they have abilities that we just don't quite understand yet. They can do things that, they can make their eyes glow. They can cloak. They can, I don't know about how the whole orb thing works, but it goes hand in hand with them, whether or not they're actually, becoming orbs themselves, or it's just something that they hang out with. I think that they can tap into the energy of the earth, and they can use that to focus that energy to do some of the things that they do that, I don't think that it's, people talk about woo and paranormal and all that. Those are good descriptions, but really it's just things that science can't quite explain yet. I don't
Right.
think that there's anything about it that is unnatural or evil or bad or anything like that. It's just nature. And yeah, we're on a path to figuring out some really cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The the paranormal, people, they always want to say, like, paranormal, to me, all that is something that is actually very normal. It's happening all the
Mhm.
time. We just don't have an explanation for it yet. We
Yeah.
haven't quite got there, but it's not, it doesn't have to be a woo thing, and there's so much of that, and I hate that there is, me and my partner here, we have differences and opinions and different things. He's very open-minded. I'm open-minded. I think he might be more open-minded sometimes, but I think that's why we make a good team, because he will kind of point out things to me sometimes that I haven't thought of. And we were talking to Ron Moorhead the other day, and he, explained some of that, with science. He's trying to, with the quantum physics and all that. I'm sure Ron's story, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So he's trying to explain some of that away. But so that's really good to hear you say that, because I kind of feel the same way about them. I feel like they're a type of people out there, another hominid or something that we just don't quite understand yet. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. So you're having all that happen, and you've come to these conclusions. So then what do you start doing? Because I know eventually you get to where you start inviting people to your house, right? And they start experiencing things too.
Yeah. Well, as I was going to the meetings and meeting people, and was making videos and posting on YouTube and participating in the Bigfoot groups on Facebook. And, it just seemed like the natural next step, it'd be to start including other people in what's happening here. So, it wasn't necessarily a matter of inviting people to my house, but just going out and going camping with them. You know,
Okay.
there's some great locations, all over the valley. And over the years, we found a few of them that just really suit our needs really well. And, we've returned there over and over and over so many times. And the Sasquatch know what we're there for. So, it's really taken on a really amazing uh, a turn. The last few years, they come right up to our fire and will hang out with us just right over the edge of the bank, and they respond to our conversations. They love to hear stories about themselves. So whereas we started out just putting out gifts as offerings, to just try to create a relationship, it's now reached the point where they look forward to us going camping as much as we do. And in the days ahead of a camp, there'll be things that happen here at the cabin. There's a lot of extra activity. Gifts will be left on the porch, tree knocks. They'll knock on the cabin walls. And then when the campouts are over, a lot of times I'll receive a gift or have some kind of an acknowledgement that it all went well. But Yeah, so it's not unusual to have multiple sightings over the course of the week. You know, we footprints. We had I'm not sure if I sent it to you. There's a video clip where he had just been over the bank of the steep bank of the river where beside our campsite, and his wet body had left the mark on the bank of long legs, and
Oh
his
no!
butt where he was sitting right there listening to us. And we
Wow.
used like the little cat toy flashing balls that are motion sensor,
Yeah.
and I line those up along the river, the bank of the river, because the people on the fire that are on the riverside, we can hear the stuff that they're doing when they're responding to us. But the people on the far side couldn't really hear anything, so now we have a visual. And one night, while we were telling stories and listening to all this stuff going on, one of the light balls was picked up and moved 8 feet while everybody's sitting right there watching it.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, so they'll turn them on, and it's like they're listening to the conversation, and when they want to agree with something or throw in their 2 cents, the light bulb will suddenly start flashing. It's like, yeah, 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 what she said, things like
Oh
that.
wow.
And, a lot of times we'll have a recorder going, or something will happen and we'll be documenting it, and those are the times when they'll make a sound that something, so that it's recorded. Or I'll just kind of get the feeling I need to be recording with the camera right now. So I turn the camera on, and I don't necessarily know why, but that's when they'll flash their eyes, or when fairies fly by. Or so, I don't really have like a two-way communication in my head where I can talk to them, but I think I can receive enough of an impulse to know that it's time to turn the camera on, and then go
Yeah.
look and see what's in it, because they gave me something to share. So
Yeah.
it's really evolved into something really wonderful.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. That's you're having that happen at the camp. You're having that happen at your house. There's other people that are experiencing it. Like I mentioned a minute ago, it's something that's happening more and more that you're reading about and hearing about. Do you do you feel like they desire a connection? Do you feel like they want to uh, build some bridges with us?
Yeah, I definitely think they do. I think they look for people that they can trust. They can see what's in your heart and what's in your mind. And if you're kind of sketchy, and your motives aren't necessarily good, you're probably not going to have any kind of an experience. And if you do, it might not be a good one. But if you're reaching out to them with an open heart, and you're honest, and you're respectful, and you're open, I think you can really connect with them. Most people, they think that they have to go out and study tracks or knock on trees to learn about the Sasquatch, but for me, the best way to learn about them is just to talk to them. Go out and ask them. Put out your intentions and be specific, because they will respond to you in very specific ways. So yeah, just go out, and it might take some time to build up that trust, but once it's developed, I think a lifelong thing. They're not going to just disappear. They're always going to have a connection to you. So once
Yeah.
you've built that, it's pretty amazing, and priceless, wonderful. Yeah.
We would get sometimes on our property that kind of remind me, when I would go to do yard work, sometimes if I didn't say anything, I was be working with like power tools or a motor or something. As soon as I cranked it on, immediately there'd be like this passive aggressive response from the forest, right? Just some like loud knocks or something, and I would cut it off. But anytime I would go to the forest edge and just say, "Hey, look, guys, I'm fixing to be doing some yard work. I'm not doing anything out here other than that." Nothing would happen. So,
Yeah.
or like when I would go out and do my gifting, I would kind of converse and had some really interesting interactions just doing that. Not that I don't know if they understood me, but I felt like they did a little bit. Maybe just my demeanor. I don't know.
Oh,
Um,
they understood you. They
yeah,
knew. Yeah. And they appreciate that. They probably already knew what you were doing, but just that you made that effort to talk to them and say that and show that respect, that goes a long ways.
yeah, Yeah. I definitely think that sometimes there is a desire to have a connection with us, with certain people, because you're just we're hearing about that more and more all the time, so that that's pretty interesting. I had another oh when all this was going on in the beginning, did you ever have like a sense of fear, or did you ever have like a moment where you might have been afraid, just because you don't understand it all yet, or did you just always feel at peace?
Um, I've been startled a few times, but there was only one time that I kind of felt my heart come up into my throat, and I was thinking, "Oh my gosh, what have you done?" And but it didn't last long. I went out in the middle of the night and I knocked on a tree, and it was a frozen cottonwood, so the sound just kind of echoed up into the forest. And there were
Yeah.
two that came from one direction, and then there was like the freight train that came from the other direction, and he was pushing over trees. And yeah, I was worried about that one, but he stopped on the far side of the creek and he didn't come any closer, and he just kind of stomped and broke sticks and things. And he made a patch of yellow snow about 6 feet across. But that if they were going to get me, it would have happened a long time ago. They've had every opportunity. So I figure,
Right.
when I survived that night, it was like, all right, she passed the test. We're all good here. So
Yeah.
other than that, I haven't felt any fear from them.
Oh
I'm
wow.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's the same way it was in the beginning. We were. I don't know. In the beginning, it was a little scary for me because I had girls. I have two girls and my wife. So I'm like, I don't know what's coming around the house, and especially if I leave for work. But as time passed, I felt more and more comfortable. And like last night, we go out and went, without getting it out there because we don't want to ruin Edge's video. We would experience some things, and I'm like, I come back and I tell my wife, and she's like, "Doesn't it scare you?" And I'm like, "No, not really." I think at this point, I've learned enough about them. I feel comfortable. I don't feel a sense of fear. I think that if they wanted to do harm, like you said, they definitely could, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah. So so what else so when you filmed the famous cloaking video, was that actually on your property or was that on a camping trip?
Well, we were camping, but the camp was just about 5 miles up the road. So I had brought my friends back down here to go up the trail behind the cabin. It's not my property, but it's adjacent property, Forest Service land. And I had gone up the trail maybe a couple hundred yards, and there's a place we call the Field of Dreams, where it's kind of a meadow and there were some logs there. And my dad and his wife and one of the ladies that were with us, they went ahead and they sat there. They'd already seen this, what I was going to show. So we just stepped maybe 100 feet off the trail just to look at a broken tree. And I think there were 9 of us all together. But so my camera was on and it was attached to my
Yeah.
walking stick just in case something was going to happen. I wasn't like actively aiming or filming or anything. And back in those days, I only had very limited space in my iPod. So I'd record for 5 minutes. And if nothing happened, then I'd delete and turn the camera back on. So I can only imagine the things that I deleted back then, not even knowing.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah, so we got
Yeah,
to where, oh, go ahead.
okay. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you
Oh,
off.
oh,
Go
no.
ahead.
Well, we got to, just off the trail, 100 feet, there's a broken tree that both ends were suspended, like just hanging on branches. And then in the middle, the center of it, something hit it hard enough that it broke it. So we're looking at this thinking this is really odd how something could have broken this tree without knocking either end to the ground. And while we're discussing this, my friend Claudia is standing in front of me, and I can see she keeps looking off to the side. And I'm looking over there to look and see what she's seeing, and I'm not seeing anything. And then I just see this triangular black head pops up and just takes off running. So, I'm thinking, oh, did you guys see that? Well, the when it ran, there was a tree right here, and then my other friend Sam was right here, so it was kind of out of view after it took off running. But from what I saw, it was just like all arms and legs and hair flying. and it was running toward the trail. So I was thinking that my dad and his wife and the other friend who had gone ahead, I was hoping that, it had crossed the trail and they'd be able to see it. But then, when it was all done, we went over and no, they hadn't seen anything. But Juanita, her little dog, had looked that way, barked. So she looked, and then when she looked back right across the trail from her, she saw a little black monkey came head first down a tree and disappeared into the bushes right there. Well, then we went back to camp and I checked the video on my iPod, which has, a little itty bitty tiny screen. And all I could see was a blur, and I couldn't see what I had, the black dome triangular shaped individual that I saw wasn't visible, just this little
Yeah.
blur. So we put it on a regular computer screen. And at that point, I'm looking at this and it's like the Predator from the Predator movie. And I'm thinking, well, my iPod can't do Predator movie stuff. I don't know what this is. So we put it on my dad's big screen in his RV. And that's we really got a good look at it. And that was a real big shock for me because, even though I had seen Sasquatch vanish into thin air, I had been rationalizing it. I'd had several experiences where they were not visible, but something was happening. And every time I rationalized that into something else. And now here I was faced with this footage that I really couldn't rationalize anymore. So, we went back the next day and looking for, a bush, something leafy, something that could have created this illusion, but there was nothing there. There was a horizontal log about that big around that when it dropped down, the blur part was in front of it, and what I saw popped up right behind it. So he dropped down, went underneath that log, and when he came up with his back to me, that was when he was visible to me, and then he ran. So we found the
Wow.
tracks that he left when he ran. Plus, we found a second trackway from another individual that we didn't know was there who had gone straight back and had looped around. And when Thinker Thunker did his analysis, he had been able to zoom in on some of the trees in the background, and you can see them being pushed. Well, that was the second individual that pushed off those trees. And the force that he used pushing off those trees pushed back into the ground about 4 inches. And then he was moving so fast that the tracks that he made after that were basically just scuffs on the ground that were between, I think, about 55 and 75 inches apart each. So that gives you an example of how fast that individual was moving. But he circled back around a pile of old logging debris, and I think both of them went down into a hole right there out of sight, and that's where they were hidden until we left.
So
But
I did not realize, pardon me, I try to do a lot of homework before I get into these interviews sometimes, and I was watching, but I did not realize that you have been on Thinker Thunker, which is pretty cool. I love watching Thinker Thunker and his channel. He does a lot of great work. But the other thing that I didn't realize was that you actually found tracks to coincide with your footage.
Yeah.
Do you have photographs of those tracks?
Well, I have about a 10-second video clip of one of them, and then all the rest are on YouTube because back then I had such little space that once I posted, I had to delete everything. I just saved the most important little clips. But yeah, they're all there to see. Yeah.
Are those on your YouTube channel?
Yep. Now, see, when the Cloaker video came out, that was the video that everybody saw. But in the weeks after that, we did probably 3, maybe 4 follow-up videos where we went back and we tried to do the recreations where we took the measurements and we documented everything that was going on around that situation. But see, most of those videos never really were seen because they weren't part of the big one, So all that
Everyone
analysis
wants to see
there.
We actually have that video that you provided to us. Thank you. If you don't mind, we'll go ahead and play that clip now for our audience. And if it's okay with you, we'll put a link to your YouTube channel down so they can go and look at all the other stuff as well.
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
And look at there, I'll be a pro.
Yeah.
Like a thrust and not a hang, what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Something hard and fast.
For any amount of time,
What the heck was that? Did you see that?
Okay, so there's that clip. Let's All right. So the thing that I love about that video too is you can hear the excitement in your voice. You know, you say, "What the heck was that? Did you see that?" You know, like that. It does not sound scripted at all to me. That doesn't sound like something. You know what I mean? Because I know there's people out there that, you know, there's always haters, but that try to find or disprove stuff. But that just sounds so natural to me. And then y'all's
It was.
conversation. Yeah, and y'all's entire conversation is just like y'all are out there doing your thing, and then what I find incredible was that you actually, so you physically saw something like flesh and blood, but that's not what you recorded with your recorder,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
really interesting to me because I've heard so many eyewitnesses talk about what you said a minute ago. Sasquatch just vanish in front of them, you know, and I always try to wrap my head around that, like what does that mean? You know, like what does that look like? Like, I don't understand, you know, but your video kind of helps put that into context a little bit. And I've heard so many of the native tribes across the United States, not just here in the peninsula, but say they can just vanish in front of you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, it's hard sometimes as humans, it's hard for us to, you know, we have all our distractions, our 9 to 5 and bills and kids, and it's hard for us to wrap our head around some of those bigger things like that and to expand our mind. But your video kind of helps put that all into perspective. So you
Yeah.
see the video. What's happening in your mind now?
Well, you know, it took a long time for me to wrap my head around that the Sasquatch are always out here. So this was like a whole new level of, well, now I've got to get this through my head as this is real. And
Yeah.
so it was a little shocking. It was upsetting, you know, because back then, you know, I was still thinking, you know, I had my mind set on what I thought they were, and they needed to fit that box. And so that was a lesson for me that, hey, you know, I kind of got to scrap the ideas that of where I wanted Sasquatch to be, what I wanted it to be. And I now have to be open to the idea that I can just be walking down the trail and there's an invisible individual that's standing right here. You know,
Wow.
so that in itself is a really hard thing to do. I mean, you can look at the video, you can talk about your experiences, you can remember the things that you've seen, and you know what's happened. But when you're actually just standing there on the trail looking around, going, there can't possibly be an individual that's standing here right beside me that is invisible. But then you hear somebody right there beside you go, "Rrrr," and okay, okay, you know, that happens
Yeah.
enough times and you start to accept it. And, you know, even now, my brain, when something happens, I have to remind myself that, oh, yeah, this could be real. This could be happening right here. This isn't just,
Wow.
you know,
Yeah.
it's an ongoing struggle because you grow up with your mind set in a certain way. And then you have to completely skip all that, drop it, and accept the
We
things that you didn't think you could.
we talked about that with Ron. You know, everybody wants to stay inside the box, and you got to go outside of the box sometimes.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a lot of similarities. You know, like listening to your story, listening to his. You know, sometimes you hear things. I would hear things, and I'm like, you turn and look, but there's nothing there, and so and I don't know how to explain that to people. So a lot of times I just avoid it because I'm like, I, you know, I try to stick to the things that I can explain, but it's good to hear other people have experiences too. It really is. And real quick, I want to play the zoomed in version of that video, if you don't mind,
Okay. Oh, go
just to
ahead.
kind of give our audience, a little bit of a better of an idea. And so we will go to that now. Bear with me. I'll be a pro at this before 2 or 3 more episodes is up. It might be a little hard on here for our audience, but we will give it a shot. Here's the zoomed in version.
Look at that.
It even has
Fully-
hands.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah,
Very
that is
cool.
pretty cool. I think, let's see here. Let's get out real quick and we will remove this. Yeah, that's incredible, Barb, that you were able to capture that. What do you think it was doing there? You think it was just watching y'all, and then maybe y'all got too close and it decided to bail?
No, I think it was on purpose. I think that it was intentional. I had already been up the trail about a half an hour earlier up to my gifting area because there were people here that were, wanting to go on this hike, and I wasn't going to want to, deviate from our plans to go check my gifts. So I had already gone up there, done all that, and everything was peaceful and quiet. And coming back out, I can remember thinking, I hope people aren't disappointed with the hike we're going to go do. But I think that they knew that what we were going to be up there doing, they knew our purpose in being there. And one of the things that happened just seconds after the event itself was my camera glitched. And that's something that we've become pretty familiar with. Nowadays they can turn it off. They can delete my videos. They can corrupt files. They can do whatever they want. And that was part of the event. But that's not something that I was able to share because I couldn't get it to go through my movie maker because it was a glitch. So I had to trim it out. So I can talk about it, but I actually have shared that part of the footage now. I've had updated software and stuff, so it goes through now. But at the time, I couldn't share that part. But it was an electronic glitch, so there was
Wow.
more going on than just being there at the right time in the right place. I think it was all intentional.
Oh wow. You had a question, you said, Edge?
Yeah, I sure did. Well, we definitely, introduced you as controversial, right? We started off, I started off my journey very similar to, it sounds like you did. First, Gigantopithecus or whatever. And then we actually get out in the field and we start learning more and more about this thing. Then we start realizing, no, maybe this is a humanoid of some sort of similar on realms of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we say the woo-woo stuff, right? Matt and I have experienced many things. On one of our original expeditions, we had our diesel heater, not maliciously moved or ruined or anything, but it was placed in a different spot. And everything else, the tarp was all left the same. We've had some things that have messed with us. We've seen some things and then heard things that we couldn't find on camera, or the opposite is true. The question, though, is this: as the research is evolving, and we're not just podcasters, we also like to get out there in the field and put boots on the ground. Where does this research go next? Where do we move forward now?
Well, I would say find yourself a nice campsite beside a river or a stream and have a little bonfire and start telling stories about the Sasquatch and invite them to come and listen. Talk to them. Don't just talk about them, talk to them. Put some toys out, give them some flashing balls to play with, put some apples out, give them a snack, tell them that's for you. And be specific when you put out your intentions as to what you're looking for. Don't just give them a general idea of what you're after. Go out and be specific. If you've got a glyph that you put out and you want to change it, or if there's an offering that is specifically for them, tell them that, and be respectful too. Don't put up trail cams. Don't stash recorders. I think if you're going to have a handheld camera or a handheld sound recorder, that's fine. They don't mind that. Just announce it. Say, hey, I'm going to be recording. If you don't mind, I'm going to record. If you do mind, just turn it off. And when you get a feeling like you should have something on, follow that, and then go back and very carefully go over your footage, because you're probably not going to see it the first time through. You might have to go frame by frame, but if you get the feeling like they gave you something, there's probably something there for you to find. So, yeah. And
Be a
whatever,
good camper.
be a good camper. Pick up trash. They love it when you pick up trash.
Yeah,
Play music,
absolutely.
tell jokes, anything that makes you laugh, anything that makes you shine. They're going to love that. So,
You know, that's what I I tell you that all the time, don't I, buddy?
Yep.
Last night, as a matter of fact, we did a little thing. I said, "Hey, we're just gonna cut the cameras off just at towards the end." You know, we got enough good footage. I didn't actually know that we. Anyways, I don't want to give too much away, but we cut the cameras off, right? And I had an audio recorder because in Quinault, I would find that they didn't mind the audio recorder. Sometimes it seemed like they'd pick it up. So there was that, and we just put it out, and then we climbed back in the truck and just sat there for about an hour. And yeah, but that I totally agree with you. Just be a good camper. You know, go out
yeah.
there, pick up your trash, and have a good time, and be inviting. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Don't be obnoxious. Don't be shooting. Don't have loud blaring music. Play a flute, sing a song, put something on that makes your heart joyful. And I think they'll enjoy that too. And
um,
when you have something that you pay attention to, they're going to focus on that. So if there's some little specific thing that you um, like something on your camp stove, part of your gear, something that you spend a lot of time fiddling with or checking on or something like that, that's going to be something they're going to focus on too. So notice the little things. There's a lot of subtle details that they're going to play with to see if you're paying attention.
yeah, absolutely. You know, it's good to hear that. What you got another video out there that we haven't got to yet that I would like to get to before we have to end today. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and play it, and then after I play it, if you will, just kind of walk us through what was going on with that.
Okay.
Give me-
I'm recording. I'm recording. I'm recording.
Wow, Barb. And so, can you kind of walk us through that? What was going on there? What was happening?
So I had an experience that I didn't have on camera, but I wanted to tell the story. So I was just going to go up the trail and do just a minute or two of film and take some pictures so I could do a voiceover video. And that was just going to be the visual while I was talking. So I got up there, I took a couple pictures and I turned around and was going to walk back to the cabin. And I said, I'm recording. And I didn't realize something had happened. I mean, maybe subliminally, my mind might have captured what was happening, but filming at 60 frames per second, those eyes are only visible in 5 frames. So even if I did see it, it was nothing more than a glint of light. But I knew something had happened. I just didn't know what. So I went back to the cabin and I watched the video and I couldn't see anything. And then that's when I started going frame by frame. And sure enough, there they were in those 5 frames. And you can see the light behind his eyes when you zoom in on it. So this is not a reflection. I mean, the little forked tree that he looked through made a perfect site for the recreation. And beyond that forked tree, it was wide open air for 60 feet. And then there's a little clump of bushes in there. So he was not close to the camera at all. He was a good distance out there. And yeah, so when you zoom in, you can see the light behind the the eyes behind the light he's emitting. And then in frame 3, his cloaked head becomes visible. And in the very last frame, frame 5, as he's turning away, you can see his eye, his brow, and his pupil. You can look right into his eye just in that last second.
Wow,
So, and that
that's pretty
also
impressive.
it's within a stone's throw of where the Cloaker event was. I mean, literally, I
Wow,
could stand. I mean, it's within 100 feet of where the
yeah,
Cloaker event happened and 10 years earlier. So,
that's pretty impressive. So,
yeah.
was there Was there ever a time when all this started that you said, because obviously at some point you start carrying a camera around with you, right? And that's how you managed to get these videos. But did you, on your own property, down at the campsite where you had stuff happening, did you start putting up like game cameras and trail cameras, or were you advised against that? What, um, tell us how you tried to document it to prove you, because I'm assuming you wanted to prove to people.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how I started out. Um, I was, uh, I had an iPod I'd gotten, and so I started carrying that, and just, like I said, I only had just minimal storage in it, so I'd record for a few minutes just in case something happened. And then I got a couple of trail cams. The first one was a used one somebody gave me. I put out in the woods, and it took a picture of Gabby, and then that was it. It just was dead. It never turned on. It never took another photo. It couldn't fix it. So I bought a brand new one, put that out there, and I think I had maybe 2 pictures of the elk, and then it had nothing but whiteout photos. And I was thinking, okay, it doesn't fit exactly, but maybe the sun was shining on it. So let's put it under the bridge where at no point in time will sun shine on it. So I did that, and I still got nothing but whiteout photos. Okay, well, at this point, I'm starting to hear from other people that the trail cam is probably not the way to go. So I just got rid of that, and I started putting out sound recorders. So I had a little waterproof pouch that I put the recorder in at my gifting area. And the first time you hear footsteps walk up, you hear the package get picked up, and then it's turned off. And the second time, you don't hear any footsteps, you just hear the package get picked up and it's turned off. The third time, it's just turned off. So after that, they just started taking them and I didn't get them back. So okay, message received. I'm not going to put recorders out in the woods anymore. So a few months went by and I thought, I was hearing vocals out here one night and I thought, I'm not going to do that. That's their space. But the yard here, this is mine. And if I want to put a recorder in my yard, that's my business. So I did. I took a recorder and I put it on the backside of a picnic bench out here where it was out of sight. Nobody could tell it was there. I left for 3 hours and I came back and the recorder was gone. And I found it on the ground about 6 feet away. It was covered in dried mud and turned off. So at that point, I never put out anything again. And as far as recording and documenting, the only thing that I do is with what I carry on me. I'll have my iPhone and I've got a bird app that I'll use. I've got a really good vocal that I recorded because we were hearing an owl and I wanted to know if the bird app would recognize a fake owl call as a real owl. So I just turned on the bird app and set it down. And while it was recording, somebody right beside me went, "Rrrr." And so that was picked up. So it's like, when we're doing a recreation, when there's something that I need to record, that's when they give us stuff. So it's not like I'm walking around with the camera on all the time anymore. I quit doing that quite a few years ago. So unless there's a reason for me to be recording or, some sense that I should, I just don't anymore. But that's why I'm sure all these things are gifts because it happens when I turn the camera on. So
Yeah, absolutely. They, it's kind of their way of acknowledging their presence or something, kind of, to you that they're there. That's pretty cool. When you do gift, you talked about gifting earlier. You talked about them gifting by showing themselves or giving you glimpses. How did that come about? What made you decide I know when I started gifting, the reason why I ask is because when I started gifting, people were like, "Are you out of your mind? Like you don't," and I'm sure you've heard the same thing, like you don't start putting stuff out because it might become dangerous, then they'll expect it all the time. And in my personal experience though, I never experienced any kind of aggression with gifting. If there would be sometimes 2 or 3 months where, life just happens and I'm not able to put something out for them. And they were fine with that. If anything, I would find like a giant river boulder on top of my gifting table. I did find that one time, but nothing aggressive. So I asked that because I get asked a lot of times, what was going on in your mind? How long had this been going on before you decided to start gifting?
Well, it was basically right after I saw the big guy up here following the elk that I felt the urge to make an offering. And at that point, I was just going out and I just like take an apple with me or some pepperoni or a candy bar. And wherever I hike to, I would just leave an offering and say, hey, this is for you. And knowing full well that, the elk or a raccoon or something would probably get it, but, the thought is there.
Yeah.
And then I started going to the meetings and discovered, that you can actually have like a specific gifting place that you go to regularly, and people were using peanut butter and putting out toys and things like that. So that's what I did. I just went and I found a secluded spot in a place that was kind of difficult to get to, that I didn't think, your average person would come across very easily. And I just started experimenting. I put out apples and jars of peanut butter, and I was never afraid that there would be any consequences, because none of the things that I was putting out there was anything they actually needed. I mean, they've been surviving just fine without my goodies forever. So that wasn't really an issue. I just mostly wanted to honor them and give them, an opportunity to check out a new toy or taste a new food, or, just make friends. And
Yeah.
there was every week I'd go visit. There was I'd give them a jar of peanut butter. The first jar of peanut butter took about 6 months. And finally I was getting ready to just bring it back to the cabin. And the last attempt was I picked it up one day and I said, see this? Turn, the lid comes off and you can get what's in here. So I put the lid back on and put it back on the stump. And the next time I went out, it wasn't that jar of peanut butter, but the jar at my other gifting stump I found with the lid pulled off. And the jar had been squeezed. So even though the end of it was still round, the jar itself was almost flat. And then you could see where sticks had been poked in there, digging it out. So then after that, all my peanut butter jars always were empty, open and empty when I found them. And 95% of the time the empty jar would be there, but every now and then it was gone. And so there'd be the pie tin and whatever, if there was food wrappers or anything like the peanut butter jar, I would always collect all that and bring it back. But it bothered me that every now and then there was peanut butter jars I wasn't getting back. So I decided that I was going to switch from peanut butter to blocks of cheese, which I thought, okay, it's protein, it's tasty, and I can wrap that in wax paper. And if I don't get the wax paper back, it'll decompose and I don't have to feel bad about littering in the woods. So I
Yeah.
did that for 2 weeks. And then I went out one morning and there was a peanut butter jar wrapper was in my driveway. So it's like, okay, I guess you guys want the peanut butter back. So I started doing that again. And then a few weeks later, I was going up the trail and I was just kind of joking and I just kind of hollered out, it sure would be nice if I could get some of these jars back. And then the next day, I had finished my whatever chores I was doing here in the yard and I was getting ready to head up the trail. And I'm crossing the road from my driveway to the trailhead. And as I'm crossing, in my mind, I see a flash of a spot downriver where I used to go in looking for rocks. And I thought, I've heard of this before where people get an image or an idea. I should follow this and see what's going to happen. So instead of going up the trail, I went on down to this spot downriver and I got there and then I'm just kind of annoyed with myself because the river's too high to go in and the trail ends here. And I mean, what am I doing? Seriously, why am I here? So I decided instead of hiking back to the trailhead, I'm just going to cut straight back into the woods and bushwhack my way into the area where I was originally going to go. So I do. I turn and I go back maybe 10, 15 feet and I look over and here's a tree, a big tree that's been pushed. So it's leaning and the roots are sticking up. So there's like the tree and the roots like this. And in that little notch is an empty peanut butter jar.
Oh,
So
wow.
they they gave me what I asked for. They gave it back. And they gave me some lessons along with it in how they gave it back to me. But yeah, so apparently they have a need for occasional peanut butter jars that they want for something. I don't know, maybe they carry water or collect bugs. I don't know what they do with them, but they did give me the
Yeah.
one back. So I don't have to feel so bad because apparently they need it.
I
But
I would try toys like the McDonald's toys out of the kids And I
Yeah.
never had any luck. But do you remember Harvest Moon from the convention, the Native
Yeah.
woman from Quinault? So
I
she's a really
remember.
good friend of mine. And we did a show together. And at the end of the show, she made a bunch of corn husk dolls for the kids. And she had a bunch of them left over. And instead of throwing them away or whatever, she was just like, "Here, Matt, take these." So I took them. I was like, "Yeah, okay, what am I going to do with these? Give them to my girls, So I take them back, and of course, my kids, kids these days, they're so far advanced, the PlayStations and the Barbies. And so I show them the cornhusk doll, and they're like, "Yeah, that's great, Dad." So I was like, what, I'm going to try this. I'll put that out there. And they took that. I actually set it in a drawer. I had a nightstand that I would use outside, old nightstand out of a house that when we moved in, I put it close to the tree line, and I would constantly gift in the same spot. But I pulled the drawer out and I put that cornhusk doll in there, and I shut that drawer slightly. I didn't close it all the way, but enough to where nothing could get in there, right? And so I come back out the next day, and it's open and the doll is gone, and I never seen that again. But there was another time where I went outside one night. We had chicken, and my wife had a Pyrex dish, one of those heavy glass ones, the really nice ones. She's still sore about this, so if she sees this, she might bring up some bad memories. But she said, "Hey, take this outside with the chicken drippings and the bones and everything, and toss it into the forest." And I said, "Okay." I said, so I go outside and I do that, and as I'm coming back in, my phone rings, and so I said, it's an old friend from Texas, so I set my dish down right there on the corner of the porch, and I start talking, and we, next thing I know, an hour and a half's gone by, and I said, "Oh, it's late. I got to get in for bed. 3 a.m. comes quick." So I run in there, and I get in bed. I'm like, I forgot something. What did I forget? And then it dawned on me. I said, "Oh, that dish." I said, "Well, it'll be fine. I'll get it in the morning, right?" I get up in the morning. It's gone, completely gone. I searched the whole property. I know I'm a dead man. As soon as she asks for it, she's gonna be mad, and so I can't find it. And I tell Mel, actually, Mel Scahan, and I talked to him. I said, "Man," I said, "I'm in some trouble here." I said, they got my wife's good dish, I think, because I mean, if a bear came up, I would have thought a bear would have busted it up or something, the glass and all that. But I said, and then we had our home security camera would go off occasionally, but the Wi-Fi was slow and there was nothing there. And so I always associated that with being them, But anyway, so the dish is there 1 minute and the dish isn't. And so I told Mel, I said, "Hey," I said, I'm in trouble here. What can I do to get this dish back?" And he says, "Look, just go to the forest and tell them, hey, look, guys, that doesn't belong to me. That belongs to my wife. I'm going to be in a lot of trouble if I don't get that dish back." And so I did that. And I did that for a couple of days. And I would even go out. It was like 35 acres that we had. And I would go out on the trails that they would use, because they had trails that they would navigate around the backside of the property. Sometimes if they just felt like not messing with us at all, I would go out there, I search those trails, nothing. That dish was gone, and I never got it back. I told Mel, I said, that was bad advice, man. I said, I think I'm just gonna have to break down and go buy a new one. And my wife, she would come outside, she'd say, like, you want to go tell them, or do I need to go over there and tell them? No, don't. I'll take care of it. But she ended up getting a new one, so.
Wow. Yeah. I guess apparently they liked that dish a lot. Either that or they discovered somebody else out there that really needed it bad. They already gave it away to somebody else.
Other things would disappear on the property, and you could ask for them back, like what you did, and they would show up, maybe a month or two later, but eventually it would show back up. That dish, that Pyrex dish, never.
No.
It's just gone.
It's a good quality dish. It's not something you
Maybe
want to
they
give
cook.
back easily.
Maybe they cook. I don't know. But yeah, so there was that. So like I told you earlier, I do a lot of homework and stuff, and I heard that you had had also some experiences with UFOs, or you had seen a UFO or something like that. Could you tell
Yeah.
us? Yeah.
Well, we were over in the Blues. I guess it would have been around 2020, I think. And we weren't at our usual location. We were at a new spot, and it's late afternoon, early evening. And I looked up, and it's clear blue skies, but there's just this burst of white light in the sky. And I was like, wow, anybody else see that burst of white light? And I hear, no, but look, there's a triangle ship over there. So it's like, oh, okay. So we watched this. I mean, it was huge. I mean, it must have been, I don't know, maybe 2 baseball fields together. It was
Oh
massive.
wow.
It was way up there a ways. And then it had like this little itty bitty dot that was pacing it right behind it. And
Huh.
it wasn't moving very fast. It was probably maybe 15, 20 minutes that it took to get from one side of the sky to the other before it was out of view again. And I tried to get it on camera, but it was just too far away. The only thing my camera picked up was just a little speck of light in the sky. But yeah, so
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. And then
Yeah. That
we've
is
had
pretty.
things like that over camp too. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah. At your regular camp.
yeah, here in Greenwater,
And
and
did
right
it
over
look
the
almost
treetops.
identical?
Yeah, the one that was over the Blues, it had one light right in the center underneath, like one big light. And the ones that were here, they had lights on the tips of the triangle. So they were a little bit
Yeah.
different. Yeah. And
Now
then there
the
was
blues.
fairies.
There were what?
The fairies, they're also unidentified flying objects that fly at the camera.
What? Yeah. Tell me about that. I'm interested because you had mentioned that earlier in the interview, I think, and I didn't know anything about that.
Well, I didn't really either. I've heard people talk about it before, but Bigfoot's always been my thing, and I've not been
Yeah.
I'm not a fairy person, but when they fly at your camera, you become a fairy person. So it was one of those things. It was just after one of the Pineapple Express had come through and it poured for days, and the rain was just letting up, and it's like, all right, we got to get out and go for a walk. So I got up there on the hill, and there's just something weird about the air, and I just had this really strong feeling that I needed to turn the camera on. And I didn't know why. I didn't have anything particular that I was planning to record. There's a dry creek bed where there's been a lot of activity, and okay, well, there's water running in it now. So I turned the camera on, and as I turned the camera on, I realized my glove was covering half the screen. Turn the camera back off, move my hand, turn the camera back on, film the creek for 10 seconds, turned it off, turned around, filmed where it was coming out under the road, the other side for 10 seconds. Okay, well, I did that. Still got this big urge to record. And I'm thinking, well, as I'm walking down from here, I can hold the camera just right so that I can frame Goldie in there with the trees in the background. And then I can get a pretty screenshot to post when I get back to the cabin. So that's my purpose in recording. So I'm walking down the road and I'm holding the camera and I'm kind of angling it just right to, get a pretty picture of her. And then I got back to the cabin and went through and I found the perfect frame, took a screenshot and I posted it. And a friend contacted me and said, oh, hey, it looks like there's a Sasquatch reading a newspaper in the background in the tree. You go check out that shadow. So normally, I would have just deleted the video once I had my screenshot, but he said that, and I figured, okay, it's just a shadow. But before I delete the video, I'm going to take a closer look. So I went to that frame and I zoomed in. And while I'm looking, something zipped across the screen. And it's like, what was that? So I backed out a little bit. And then that's when I spotted what looks like a bright white orb kind of floating around. And then it kind of zips past me and it morphed into like this baby shape. And then kind of like a fairy. So I sent Arla the video clip and she says, oh, yeah, that's a fairy. Okay, well, so what else is in this clip? So I slowed it down and looked at it more. And just after the first bright one flew past me, there's another one that comes by and you can see it lift off the road way down the road. And I measured it out. It was about 130 feet and it passed me in less than half a second. So it was traveling twice the speed of a hummingbird. And I mean,
Yeah.
I went through, and the two video clips at the top when I've filmed the waterfall, and each one was about 10 seconds. There's nothing there. But that video clip, when I first turned it on and my fingers were, my gloved hand was covering half of the screen, it's a 1 second video clip. And in that clip, you can see two of them fly by. And I mean, between the camera and the ground. And I had to slow it down to 1/8 and 1/16 speed just to be able to see the streak of them going by. So,
Wow.
okay, well, now that I'm aware that these are out there, I went back up and I've taken friends up there and we've actually seen them with our own eyes now. I mean, they're really fast. The bright one isn't quite as fast. She meanders a little, but there's like one of her and then there's several of the other that are just dull or very fast ones. So I don't know if maybe she's like the queen and they're the workers, or so I don't know if you would relate them to being birds or bugs or how you would do it. But we've also now seen them up at one of our camps. A couple of years ago in May, we were out on a night walk and one flew over, four of us walking sideways. The person on the far end had a one about so big fly over their shoulder, and a few seconds later, one that was about the size of a cantaloupe flew over my shoulder. So
Wow.
I think they're like the Sasquatch, that once they know that you know, they're going to give you more attention, because we've seen them a few times up there now. But it also could be that they're just so fast that until you actually know to look, that you aren't even going to be aware, or if you do see one, you might go, oh, it must have been a bug, something like that. But yeah.
I think
So
that's kind of like
real.
the case with Sasquatch a lot. Most people are not aware of their presence or aware of what to look for. So a lot of stuff goes unnoticed. Like you said, the small details, the small subtle things, earlier. So, wow, yeah, that's exciting. I've never heard anybody talk about that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool to actually meet somebody who has had experience.
Well, there's a lot of orb things that are associated with the Sasquatch, a lot of bright lights and, energy balls and things. And these really literally are just another form of an orb or ball of light or whatever, or even though they're physically solid, they're
So we're
not.
not talking about something that. So we're not talking about something that looks like Disney's Tinkerbell. We're talking about
Well,
something that's more.
actually,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I sent you one of the screenshots, but yeah. So she morphed from like just a light into what looked like kind of a baby form, and then Tinkerbell. It's
Oh
so
wow.
I
Yeah.
don't know that that's like her true form, or that's just if she's capable of taking on other forms to show me what I want to see. When I've
Yeah.
seen her with my own eyes out here, she looks like a bright white horizontal leaf that just kind of, she like the ball ones, they fly in a straight trajectory. She kind of meanders a little. She'll go over here and she'll go over there, even though she's still moving fast. She's very bright, but she usually just looks like a flat leaf. So I'm
And
not sure that Tinkerbell photo is representative of how she truly is, or if that's just what she showed the camera.
how big would you say that like just how big would you say they are?
Well, the one that flew by the camera was about that big. The first two that flew past with my hand blocking it with the glove, they were maybe dime sized. The other ones that flew back up the road were more like this. We've seen them at camp, the ones that are this size. We've seen another one of the bright white ones at camp, and she's much smaller. She's about half the size of the one that was up here. And then, of course, there was the cantaloupe sized one that went over my shoulder. But the round ones aren't bright. They're just kind of a dull gray. She's the only one that really glows. So
Maybe they've been snatching all of Sasquatch's gifts and
maybe,
they're the
maybe,
heavier ones.
maybe
Well,
well
I don't
fed.
know. Yeah, well fed. But
Yeah,
maybe that's why you
but
get
still
those
fast.
growls.
Yeah,
They're eating all his
maybe.
food. I don't know. That's horrible.
Oh, you want to hear
um,
something weird though? when I found out they
Yes.
were up there, I decided, I was going to give them a gift like I used to gift the Sasquatch. And I had a fresh bacon maple bar. So I took it up and I put it on a stump just above the hill where they'd flown past the camera. And then I had like a little copper wolf ornament and a little like energy generator type puck thing. But the maple bar, I went back a few days later and all the fatty pieces of bacon were in a little pile beside it. So the rest of the bacon was eaten and most of the frosting, but the fatty uncooked pieces of bacon had been picked off. So that's something I would do myself.
Yeah.
And then I went back up a few days later and all of it was gone. But so,
Wow.
but initially they don't like the fatty pieces, or whoever was snacking didn't.
Yeah, they have a little bit of a health conscious.
Yeah.
So,
Or just, ew, it's wiggly. A wiggly
I
bacon.
wanted to say something real quick too. A minute ago, you mentioned the Pineapple Express, and we have a lot of viewers in the South and that are not in the PNW. And so for what she's talking about when she says the Pineapple Express is not the movie, she's talking about these atmospheric rivers that we get, and we get a lot of them here, especially in the Olympics. So that's what she was referring to, not the movie. And for our viewers in
Torrential
Texas,
downpour that goes on
throughout
for
the-
days.
Yeah, throughout the South. I'm sure there's some people that are probably down south. They're like, I've had to learn when we first moved to Washington. It's like you got Snoqualmie, Puyallup, and then you got these squalls, and then you got the Pineapple Express. You got things that only people in Washington are going to understand what I'm saying right now. Back home, their minds are blown watching this. I'm like, Snoqualmie, what's that? Puyallup. When we first moved here, like, I have to go to that. I have to go over to that town that starts with a P, the P word. And they're like, Puyallup? I'm like, yeah, that's the one. It took me a while. And so learned things like fixing to is not a word when we moved here. It is in the South.
Right.
Fixing to go to Walmart. It's not here. So my wife, she's probably watching this once it's edited, and she's going to be like, he's an idiot. well, Barb, this has been a blast. I really enjoyed having you on. And, if you're able to, I don't know if you could send us that fairy picture. I'd like to throw it in here at the end of the video.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
We've just had a great time. I know Edge has had a great time. And is there anything you want to talk about? I know you got your book that you have. Where can people buy it, or any public appearances upcoming?
It's The Unseen Audience. You can get it on Amazon, or if you'd like a signed copy, send me a message on Messenger. I'm going to be at the Packwood event in June, the one Mel's putting on. And then I'll be out at the Sasquatch Summit again in November. And I don't have anything else planned other than those for the moment, but we're working on some stuff. So
awesome. Well, this has been a real privilege, and I'm going to go ahead and let you go if you'll hang around for just a minute, and then as we close out, and then we'll talk just a little bit more. That's okay with you?
Okay, sure.
Thanks, Barb. This has been awesome.
You're welcome.
Yes.
I've had a great time.
You so much
Thank
for
you.
coming. All right.
Bye.
All right, everybody. That was a great episode. I had a great time with Barb. And, just again, if you like this material, if you like this content, one way you can support us and help us is go click on our Patreon channel and join, or listen to Spotify, or click that like and subscribe button. You guys have no idea how much that really helps us. So with that being said, we also have a store that we have out there that'll be out in the bottom, where you can get, your Olympic Sasquatch and Beyond merch. And go check out Barb's book, and check out her. If you have an opportunity to go see her in person, I highly recommend it. You're not going to be disappointed. So with that said, y'all have a good one. And remember, you don't find it finds you.